The next morning, the clinic seemed to have expanded while Elias slept. The hallway was longer than it had ever been, doors that he didn't recognize lining the walls, some cracked open just slightly, revealing glimpses of rooms filled with moving shadows. He tried to count the doors, but numbers lost meaning. They shifted, appearing and disappearing with each blink of his eyes. A cold draft crawled along the floor, carrying the faint scent of antiseptic mixed with something decayed, something ancient, almost like the smell of buried things. Elias' hands trembled as he reached for the first door on the left. A patient sat inside, yet when he stepped closer, the figure's face blurred, like water running over stone. He could see inside the patient's bones, each vertebra twisting unnaturally, limbs stretching beyond human possibility. And then the patient turned to him, eyes black voids, whispering in a voice that was not theirs, "Do you feel it? The rhythm between body and time." Elias staggered back, grasping the edge of the doorframe. He could hear the clinic itself breathing, pulsing with a heartbeat that was not his own. He had to remind himself to breathe, each inhalation thick with the sensation that reality itself was bending, stretching, reshaping around him. The walls seemed to breathe, inhaling and exhaling in rhythm with some cosmic pulse, as if the building was alive, sentient, and aware of every thought he had. The next patient was a man Elias didn't recognize, yet somehow felt familiar. He had been injured in a car accident years ago, but Elias couldn't place how he had arrived here. His body was fractured in impossible ways, bones appearing broken, fused, and healed at the same time. When Elias tried to touch the man's arm, it extended like elastic, snapping back with a sound like cracking glass. "Time bends here," the patient whispered, voice echoing like it came from multiple points in the room at once. "Do you see? You've opened it. You've always been part of it." Elias felt panic clawing at his chest. He tried to leave the room, but the hallway outside had disappeared, replaced by a vast empty space that stretched into darkness. Shadows moved across the floor, reaching toward him, writhing like serpents, their movements synchronized with some hidden rhythm that seemed to echo inside his own body. Every step he took sent ripples through the floor, the walls, the air, as though the building were a membrane and he a droplet disturbing it. He tried to focus on something concrete, anything familiar, the smell of antiseptic, the feel of the massage table under his hands, but even these anchor points betrayed him. The floorboards beneath his feet pulsed like the beating of a heart, vibrating in time with the whispering voices of patients he had treated years ago, decades ago, yet some of them never existed at all. His own reflection appeared in the glass of a window, multiple versions of himself staring back, each older, younger, deformed, some smiling, some screaming silently. A sudden sound made him freeze, a faint, metallic scraping like fingernails over polished wood. He turned to see a figure emerging from one of the shadows, taller than any human, sinews wrapped around its limbs like cords of muscle and shadow. Its face was obscured, but Elias could feel its awareness, patient and probing. "You think you are alone," it said, voice like grinding metal through the bone. "But you have always been part of the pattern. Every touch, every adjustment, every attempt to heal, it belongs to us now." The hallway began to shift beneath his feet. Doors opened and closed spontaneously, revealing scenes of patients he had never seen before, yet their expressions were familiar in some visceral, almost ancestral way. He saw a little girl sitting on a massage table, her limbs twisting in impossible angles. She looked at him and smiled, teeth blackened, eyes empty. "Elias Hart," she whispered. "You will join us. You already have." Desperation rose in him like a tide, and he ran blindly through the endless hallway, trying to find the exit. But every door led to another room filled with impossible forms, each patient a vessel of time, of pain, of memory that should not exist. Some of the figures spoke in unison, chanting, whispering, their voices layered over each other until they formed a single thought, a single truth he could not escape. Time bends. Body bends. You bend. You belong. He stumbled into a room that resembled his own office, but warped. The walls were taller, stretching impossibly toward a ceiling he could not see. His own desk was there, papers scattered across it, but each paper showed memories he did not recognize, patient charts of people who had never existed. He touched one, and the ink burned his fingers, searing a memory into his mind, a memory of adjusting a patient's spine, but feeling the bones of the universe shift under his touch. The figure appeared again, silent now, standing in the corner. Elias could see the pulse of the room through its form, shadow sinews expanding and contracting, absorbing the light, absorbing him. "Every motion you make resonates," it said. "Every healing is a distortion. Every touch binds you closer to the rhythm between body and time. You are already caught. There is no leaving." He fell to his knees, hands pressed to his ears as the whispers escalated into a cacophony, overlapping screams of pain and laughter, voices of patients long dead and never born. He felt himself stretching, twisting, not just physically but across time, existing in multiple moments at once, each version of himself observing the others, each version screaming silently. The pulse of the clinic matched his heartbeat, then overtook it, controlling it, reshaping him, reshaping the rooms, the shadows, the patients. And then, in that unbearable tension, a doorway appeared, a faint, golden glow in the darkness, almost inviting. Elias hesitated, torn between the instinct to flee and the compulsion to step through, knowing that every choice was both real and unreal, past and future, body and time. He stepped forward, and the clinic seemed to exhale, the walls contracting around him, shadows recoiling as though preparing for a revelation he was not yet ready to understand. Inside the doorway the air was different, still, almost sacred. He saw a vast chamber filled with a pulsating light that seemed to be made of bone and shadow intertwined. Figures moved within it, not patients, not staff, but entities of pure temporal distortion, bodies bending impossibly, sinews stretched across centuries, faces flickering in and out of reality. They observed him with patient curiosity, as though he had been expected, as though he were the final instrument in a symphony that had been playing long before he existed. Elias understood, with a terror so profound it shook him to his very core, that he had crossed into the heart of the clinic, into the epicenter of the distortion. Between body and time, there was a space where pain, memory, and flesh intertwined, a space where he would never again be alone. And yet, for the first time, he felt a strange clarity amidst the horror. The clinic had always been alive, aware, patient, and he had always been part of its rhythm. He had touched it. It had touched him. And now there was no escape. Elias hesitated at the threshold, the golden light spilling onto his trembling hands like liquid fire. The figures inside the chamber paused, their impossible forms suspended in mid-motion. He realized that they were not merely observing him, they were measuring him, calculating his presence, evaluating the resonance of his body within the endless web of time and space that the clinic had become. The air smelled of ozone and iron, thick with the pulse of something ancient, something older than human comprehension. As he stepped forward, the chamber seemed to expand exponentially, the walls dissolving into a void filled with shimmering threads of light that twisted like veins through the darkness. Each thread vibrated with the memories of patients he had treated, stretching across centuries, some of them patients who had never existed, others who had already died long before he had ever laid hands on them. He felt the threads tugging at him, pulling him in multiple directions at once, until he was no longer certain where his body ended and the clinic began. A figure emerged from the light, a woman, her body elongated, almost skeletal, skin pale and translucent. Her eyes were black mirrors, reflecting not Elias but countless versions of him, each one screaming silently. "Elias Hart," she whispered, voice echoing in every corner of the void. "You have seen the pattern. You have felt the rhythm. You are part of it. Do you understand what it is to manipulate bodies across time?" He shook his head, panic surging. I don't. I only try to help." His words sounded weak, almost absurd in the vastness of the chamber. The woman tilted her head as if amused by his naivete. "Help?" she asked. "Every touch binds a ripple. Every stretch fractures the continuum. You heal and yet you destroy. You adjust and yet you bend reality itself. You are no longer the observer. You are the instrument." Suddenly, the threads of light began to tighten, wrapping around him like cords of sinew, pulling at his limbs. He tried to resist, but each motion only amplified the sensation. He could feel himself splitting across time, existing in multiple versions simultaneously. One version of him was screaming as he treated a patient who had been dead for years. Another was frozen mid-motion, contorting under the invisible hands of the clinic. A third version was suspended in the air, limbs bending impossibly, eyes wide with a silent, eternal terror. The skeletal woman approached, her fingers brushing the air near his face, sending shivers through every nerve in his body. "Do you feel it now?" she whispered. "The pulse? The rhythm? The weight of every body you have ever touched, every life you have altered? You are part of us. You cannot leave." Elias felt himself breaking under the pressure of realization. Time had lost all meaning. Seconds stretched into minutes, minutes stretched into years. He could see past and future intertwining, the clinic existing simultaneously in multiple eras, each patient a note of pain, each adjustment a distortion echoing across centuries. Memories he did not recognize flooded his mind. Patients who had never existed, caregivers long dead, even children born centuries before, their suffering bleeding into his consciousness. And then the whispers began. At first faint, barely audible like distant echoes. Then louder, overlapping, a symphony of agony and despair. Voices of patients past and future, some pleading, some accusing, some chanting in a language that should not exist. You are the pattern, they hissed. You are the rhythm. You cannot escape. The sound was unbearable, yet Elias could not close his ears. He could not look away. Every fiber of his being resonated with the cadence of the clinic, a melody of flesh, time, and shadow. From the shadows more figures emerged. Some human, some grotesque distortions of humanity, limbs elongated, heads turned at impossible angles, skin stretched taut over bones that shouldn't exist. One patient reached out with multiple hands, grasping at Elias as if to pull him into the threads of time itself. He screamed and stumbled backward, his body already splitting across countless moments, each scream echoing into infinity. He realized in a moment of horrifying clarity that the clinic was not just alive, it was sentient, aware, patient, and omniscient. It remembered every touch, every thought, every breath. It had been waiting for him, the perfect observer, the perfect healer, to bind into its rhythm. The threads of time wrapped tighter, constricting him, embedding his consciousness into the very framework of the building. He was simultaneously Elias Hart and something else entirely, a node in the network of bodies and memories that spanned centuries. Then, in the midst of chaos, he saw a small figure, a child, barely a shadow, flickering like a candle. She reached for him, eyes wide with innocence, yet her presence felt like a lifeline. He reached toward her, desperate for connection, for sanity. The skeletal woman hissed, stepping between them. "Do you think there is salvation?" she said. "Even the children are nodes. Even the innocent are instruments. There is no escape, only rhythm. Only pulse. Only pattern." Elias's mind began to fracture further. He saw himself at different ages, making the same adjustments, treating the same patients, reliving the same moments all simultaneously. Some versions were calm, others screaming, others laughing maniacally. He realized with a crushing inevitability that he was now woven into the very fabric of the clinic. He could never leave. Every step he took, every motion of his hands, every adjustment of a limb, sent ripples through time, bending past, present, and future in ways he could no longer control. And yet, a spark remained, a small, stubborn ember of human defiance. Elias focused on the child's eyes, trying to hold on to something pure, something untainted. He remembered the first patient he had ever healed, the first time a body had responded to his touch. That memory, fragile as it was, gave him a strange clarity. Perhaps he could navigate the pattern, influence the rhythm without being consumed entirely. Perhaps there was a way to survive without surrendering completely to the pulse of the clinic. The skeletal woman laughed softly, a sound like bones grinding together. "Do you think you can control it?" she whispered. "You are already part of the pattern. Every motion you make, every breath you take, every thought you have belongs to us. Between body and time you are no longer yourself. You are eternal. You are instrument. You are rhythm." Elias fell to the floor, gasping, the threads of light wrapping around him, pulling him through visions of patients, of buildings, of moments stretching centuries. He realized the clinic had become infinite, expanding beyond physical walls, beyond his understanding, beyond reality itself. And within that infinity he would exist forever, a guardian and a prisoner, a healer and a vessel, trapped between body and time, witnessing the endless pulse of life and suffering that the building commanded. Even in this hopelessness, he clung to the memory of human touch, of healing, of care. Perhaps he thought he could find a rhythm within the rhythm, a small space untouched by the clinic's omnipotent awareness. Perhaps he could endure. And so he waited, breathing, listening, existing between the moments, between body and time, in the infinite horror of the clinic's heart. Elias lay on the floor of the infinite chamber, threads of light weaving through him, pulsating in rhythm with his heartbeat, yet far faster, far stranger. He could see the pulse of the clinic everywhere, through the walls, the floors, the very air, and realized that every motion, every breath, every memory he held was already part of it. He tried to lift himself, but his body no longer obeyed simple commands. Limbs moved independently, stretching and contorting, as though guided by an unseen force, twisting him across multiple points in space and time. From the shadows, whispers arose again, louder, overlapping in an intricate web of sound. They were the patients, both living and dead, the unborn and the long-forgotten, all of them merging into a chorus of accusation and command. "You belong, they hissed, between body and time. You are pulse. You are rhythm. You are instrument. Each word reverberated through his bones, shaking him to the core. He closed his eyes, desperate for respite, but the darkness behind his eyelids was not empty. It was full of movement, endless corridors filled with twisted versions of himself, each one a reflection of every choice he had ever made or failed to make. He tried to focus, to anchor himself to a single memory, a single patient he had healed in his early days as a physiotherapist. A little boy with a fractured arm, crying quietly, trusting him to make it right. Elias felt a moment of warmth, a flicker of human care, and for a brief instant the threads slackened. The shadows recoiled and the pulse slowed. The skeletal woman appeared again, her form more fluid now, limbs melting into darkness, yet her eyes burned with the same cold inevitability. You cling to human frailty, she said. It will not save you. The rhythm is eternal and you cannot escape it. You cannot unlearn what you have touched. A doorway shimmered in the distance, one of the few tangible forms in the impossible space. Elias crawled toward it, dragging himself through the undulating floor, which now felt like thick, viscous flesh. Every step was a struggle, as if the clinic itself resisted his movement, testing his resolve, measuring his fear. He passed countless patients frozen in grotesque positions, some reaching toward him with elongated hands, others whispering secrets that clawed at his mind. He glimpsed faces he did not recognize, yet somehow remembered, as though the clinic had pulled fragments from other lives to populate its ever-expanding labyrinth. The doorway led him into a room that resembled his old treatment space, but warped. The walls were covered in mirrors, reflecting infinite versions of Elias and his patients, each one subtly different. Some were broken, their faces jagged, eyes hollow. Others were whole but twisted, their limbs bent impossibly, muscles elongated, bones fracturing and healing in impossible sequences. He could see the cumulative effect of every adjustment he had ever made, the echoes of time, the distortions in flesh, the resonance of pain and healing entangled across decades. In the center of the room, a patient sat on a massage table, yet she was clearly not human. Her skin glowed faintly, translucent, revealing bones and sinews layered with strange, shifting textures. Her eyes were black voids, and when she spoke, her voice was both many and one. Do you feel it? Every body you have touched, every time you have healed, you've intertwined with us. You are no longer separate. You are rhythm. You are pulse. You are instrument. Elias staggered backward, fear gnawing at him. No. I only wanted to help, he whispered, voice trembling. The figure tilted her head as if amused by his naivety. Helping is not enough. Every action, every intention, every touch, it bends time and body alike. You cannot undo it. You are a node, a conduit, a witness and participant in a continuum that stretches beyond comprehension. The mirrors around him shifted. He saw himself at different ages, performing treatments he didn't remember. Some were calm, others screamed silently. He realized he was experiencing multiple timelines simultaneously, each one layered over the other, converging in a symphony of horror that he could not escape. One reflection reached out from the glass, its hand passing through the surface, and he felt the cold, wet grip of sinew and shadow on his own flesh. Pain shot through him, yet he was not merely hurt. He was observing himself being torn apart across multiple realities. Desperate, he tried to close his eyes, but the chamber would not allow it. Darkness was not an escape, it revealed more. In the black void behind his eyelids, he saw the clinic itself, enormous, pulsing, alive, stretching across cities, decades, lifetimes. He could see every patient who had ever entered, every adjustment he had made, every outcome both lived and unlived. They were all nodes, all instruments, all part of a rhythm that had no beginning and no end. A whisper came from everywhere and nowhere. The rhythm remembers. The rhythm judges. The rhythm waits. The skeletal woman emerged from the shadows again, closer now, and he could feel her presence inside his bones. Do you understand? She asked. Every action resonates. Every touch binds you further. Between body and time, there is no escape, only continuation. You exist because we allow it. You endure because we permit it. You act because the rhythm wills it. Do you understand? Elias shook his head, terror and comprehension colliding in his mind. I exist, but I do not belong. His words were swallowed instantly, echoed in infinite variations by the countless reflections around him. Some screamed, some laughed, some whispered, all at once, forming a chorus that resonated through his body, through the chamber, through the very fabric of reality. The patient on the table stretched her limbs impossibly, sinews lengthening, bones bending with a grotesque elegance. "Belonging is not a choice," she said. "Existence is rhythm. Existence is pulse. You are woven. You are entangled. You are inevitable." Elias fell to his knees, the mirrors shattering around him, shards flying but never hitting, reflecting his body multiplied 1,000 times, 1,000,000, an infinity. And in that moment, he understood the terrifying clarity. The clinic was not merely a building, nor was it merely sentient. It was time itself, manifesting in flesh and shadow, feeding on touch, on memory, on body. Every patient he had treated, every motion he had made, every adjustment, every moment of care, all of it had bound him to this entity. He was already part of it. He could never leave. He was rhythm, he was pulse, he was instrument. Yet, amid the horror, a spark remained. The child from before flickered in the corner of his vision, small and fragile, yet bright. Elias focused on her, clinging to that remnant of innocence. Perhaps, just perhaps, there was a way to navigate the rhythm, to exist within the pattern without being consumed completely. But even as he reached toward her, the chamber pulsed, the threads tightened, the shadows whispered, and he knew one undeniable truth. He was trapped, forever entwined between body and time, a participant in an eternal living nightmare from which there would be no final waking. Elias moved forward, dragging himself across a floor that now pulsed with life, thick and viscous, like coagulated time. Every step sent shivers through his bones, echoes of patients past and future reverberating with every pulse. The child he had glimpsed before flickered at the edge of his vision, sometimes near, sometimes impossibly far, yet always watching. Her presence was both reassurance and warning, a fragile thread of light in the endless darkness. He entered a hallway that stretched beyond perception. Doors appeared on either side, some open, some closed, others warped, shifting like liquid. Each doorway contained a moment, memories, potentialities, fragments of time, and every patient he had ever touched was trapped inside, frozen yet alive, writhing in pain and terror that defied chronology. He saw patients he had never met, some twisted by centuries, some appearing as infants he had never treated, all bound to the rhythm he had unknowingly invoked. From the shadows emerged figures he could not name, their forms shifting and unstable, human yet grotesque. Limbs bent at impossible angles, faces fractured, eyes multiplying across their heads, yet they moved with purpose, circling him, guiding him. One stepped forward, its voice a cacophony of tones, simultaneously male and female, old and young, whispering in a language he could not comprehend. "You are the conductor," it said. "Every motion, every thought, every breath resonates. You shape the flow. You are already instrument. You cannot retreat." Elias stumbled backward, pressing himself against the wall, yet it seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat, as though the building itself sensed his panic and fed upon it. The air thickened, turning viscous, making each inhalation a labor. The threads of light, previously separate, began to converge, wrapping around him, interlacing with the shadows, forming a lattice that stretched through time itself. He could see glimpses of his own life reflected in the lattice. Every patient, every decision, every success, every failure, each one a node, a pulse, a note in a symphony he could not escape. The skeletal woman appeared again, her elongated form moving with unnatural fluidity. "Do you understand now?" she asked, her voice grinding like stone. "The rhythm does not forgive. The pulse does not pause. You are bound because you touched. You are bound because you existed. You are bound because you dared to heal." Elias could barely respond, his tongue thick, his mind splintered across multiple timelines. I don't," he whispered. But even his words echoed in infinite variations, some accusatory, some mocking, some pleading, as though his own voice had multiplied into an army of judgment. A new doorway shimmered in the distance. He forced himself to move toward it, navigating the corridor filled with shifting forms and impossible reflections. As he entered, he found himself in a vast chamber that was both familiar and alien. The walls were mirrors, the floor was flesh, and the ceiling rippled like liquid. Patients, both living and spectral, moved within, their forms stretched across decades, centuries, some even existing in multiple states at once. A man who had died decades ago reached out, fingers passing through Elias as if he were both present and absent, whispering secrets of time and body that burned into his mind. Elias realized that each patient was a story, a node, a timeline, and that he was the thread that wove them all together. Every adjustment he had ever made, every touch he had offered in care, had connected him to this network, this labyrinth of suffering and memory. The walls themselves seemed to pulse with the echoes of centuries of treatment, The pain and relief, the fractures and the healing, all tangled together into a rhythm that he could feel within his own body. The skeletal woman moved closer, and with each step the air thickened further, a viscous force that made every breath a struggle. "There is no escape," she whispered. "Every thought, every motion, every heartbeat is counted, recorded, integrated. You cannot leave the rhythm. You cannot leave the pulse. You are part of the instrument, whether you wish it or not." Elias fell to his knees, pressing his hands to the floor, trying to anchor himself, to resist the pull of the lattice that bound him. Yet the lattice was already inside him, running through his veins, twisting his mind, merging memory and present, body and time. He heard whispers from every direction, some accusing, some pleading, some instructing. "Touch," one voice said. "Move," another whispered. "Feel," came a third. The chorus became overwhelming, layering upon itself until Elias felt every motion he had ever made, every patient he had ever treated, every decision he had ever made, vibrating in perfect unison. He was a node in an infinite network of pain, memory, and body. Then the child appeared again, a small spark of innocence amidst the horror. She reached toward him, but the threads of the lattice wrapped around her, pulling her back. "You can't save her," the skeletal woman whispered. "No one can save anyone here. You only exist to participate. You only exist to resonate. You are part of the rhythm now." Elias cried out, trying to pull her free, but the lattice tightened, the chamber pulsed, the whispers escalated, and he felt himself fragmenting further across multiple timelines, multiple realities, multiple bodies. And then, in a brief instant, he glimpsed clarity. Perhaps he could navigate the rhythm, manipulate the pulse without being consumed entirely. Perhaps he could endure, not by escaping but by mastering the flow, by understanding the cadence of the clinic, the harmony of body and time. But even as hope flickered, the shadows, the whispers, the skeletal woman, the infinite patience, all reminded him of the truth. There was no freedom here, only adaptation, only survival, only the eternal, unyielding rhythm of existence. Elias Hart, once a simple physiotherapist, now existed between lifetimes, between bodies, between moments. He was pulse. He was rhythm. He was instrument. And in the infinite labyrinth of the clinic, he would continue to move, to touch, to endure, forever entwined in the endless dance of body and time. Elias Hart stood, or perhaps floated, in the center of the endless chamber, the threads of light and shadow coiling around him like serpents of time itself. He could no longer distinguish himself from the clinic. Every heartbeat, every thought, every memory was both him and the building, simultaneously past, present, and future. The whispers had evolved into a chorus, a living symphony of every patient he had ever touched, of every body that had ever bent under his hands, of every moment he had existed within the rhythm of care and distortion. The child flickered before him once more, a fragile beacon amidst the suffocating darkness. Her eyes were pools of light, yet even she seemed to shimmer with the pulse of the clinic. Elias reached toward her, desperate for connection, for grounding, for a remnant of humanity in the chaos. Yet as he moved, the threads tightened, pulling not just him but the child into the lattice of time. "You cannot separate yourself," the skeletal woman whispered, voice grinding like stone against bone. "Every motion is counted. Every touch is resonance. Every breath is pattern. You are inseparable from us. You are eternal." Elias screamed, a sound that multiplied infinitely, echoing across countless timelines. He could feel himself splitting, fragmenting, existing in multiple moments simultaneously. In one he was adjusting a patient's spine, in another he was collapsing under the weight of centuries, in yet another he was a child again, learning to care for others with hands that already knew the rhythm of eternity. Each existence was real, each one vivid, each one unbearable. The chamber pulsed, walls and floors breathing like living flesh. Patients both human and impossible moved around him, their forms shifting, stretching, bending with time. Some reached toward him, seeking comfort or vengeance or understanding. Others were suspended mid-motion, frozen in infinite agony. He realized the clinic had become a sentient entity, one that absorbed every action, every thought, every intention, binding him deeper into its rhythm. He was not trapped merely in a building. He was trapped in time itself, in the interplay of body and existence. The skeletal woman advanced, her elongated form flowing like ink through water, limbs wrapping around threads of light. "Do you feel it?" she asked. "The pulse? The rhythm? The eternal cadence that binds everything? You were chosen long ago, Elias Hart. Every hand you healed, every life you touched, every motion across decades, it all led to this moment. You are both conductor and instrument. You are both observer and participant. You cannot leave. Elias fell to his knees, pressing his hands to his head, trying to resist the sensation of being unmade and remade simultaneously. He felt every past patient, every future patient, every body and limb he had ever known, vibrating within him. The chamber around him became a kaleidoscope of suffering and memory, shifting with a rhythm he could feel in his bones. He understood now that the clinic's heartbeat was not just a metaphor, it was literal, a force that controlled the flow of lives, bodies, and time. A moment of clarity pierced the chaos. Perhaps he could exist within the rhythm without being consumed entirely. Perhaps, through understanding and intention, he could navigate the pulse, shaping it subtly, threading compassion into the pattern of inevitable distortion. He reached for the child once more, focusing on her light, letting it anchor him. The skeletal woman recoiled slightly, as if surprised by the ember of human determination, yet she quickly adapted, her presence a constant reminder of the eternal vigilance of the rhythm. Time began to splinter even further. Elias saw himself at every age, touching bodies he had not yet healed, witnessing moments he had not yet experienced, feeling the pain and hope of lives stretching centuries into the past and future. The threads of the lattice wove through him, yet he no longer resisted entirely. Instead, he moved with them, threading small acts of care into the pulse, tiny gestures of balance and stability amidst the chaos. Each patient he touched resonated with relief, even if fleeting, a flicker of light in the infinite dark. The skeletal woman observed silently, her black mirror eyes reflecting every version of Elias, yet she made no move to intervene. The whispers grew quieter, more harmonious, a rhythm now tolerable, almost musical. Elias felt a strange serenity amid the horror. He had not escaped, yet he had adapted. He was instrument, yes, but also a subtle hand guiding the notes, threading compassion into the eternal symphony. The child approached, stepping lightly through the lattice of threads, reaching her small hand to his. He clasped it, feeling a grounding warmth. "You are part of it," she whispered, "but you can endure. You can navigate the pulse. You can survive." Her words resonated with clarity, a rare gift in the chaos of time and body. The chamber pulsed one final time. Shadows and figures, past and future, converged, acknowledging his presence. Elias stood, now both fully himself and fully entwined with the clinic's eternal rhythm. He understood the horror, the responsibility, the inescapable nature of his existence. And yet, within that comprehension he also found purpose. To endure, to touch, to care, to navigate the infinite lattice of body and time with deliberate intention, threading moments of humanity into the eternal pulse. He looked around at the infinite patience, the shifting reflections, the shadows and whispers. "I am part of this," he whispered to himself, voice steady, "and I will endure. I will move with the rhythm, not against it." The threads of light and shadow wrapped around him, tighter yet comforting, acknowledging his acceptance. He felt his heartbeat align with the pulse of the clinic, not as submission but as coexistence. And so Elias Hart, physiotherapist, healer, witness and participant, continued to move through the infinite living labyrinth of body and time. He existed between moments, between patients, between shadows and light. He was pulse, he was rhythm, he was instrument, and within that eternal rhythm he endured, aware, present, and infinitely bound, a sentinel of the impossible continuum where body and time danced together forever. The whispers faded to a low hum, the chamber pulsed gently, and the child's light lingered in his vision. There was no escape. There was no end. Only the rhythm. Only the pulse. Only the eternal dance of existence between body and time. Elias smiled faintly, a small human defiance in the infinite dark. He moved forward, one step at a time between body and time into eternity,